AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host, Bar Kelly, brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Hello, welcome to the Alldus podcast. As part of our AI in Action series, I'm delighted to introduce David Neville. David is the head of machine learning at Nostos Genomics. David, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
So, David, you're living in Berlin at the moment. Tell us a little bit about your journey to now and how you got into the whole world of machine learning.
Absolutely. I'm originally from Italy, so my journey started many years ago, actually there. I originally studied as a philosopher at the university, but then I got, throughout my studies, more and more interested in the human mind and the human brain, what today is called cognitive science. This led me studying different subfields, including also artificial intelligence, artificial life, which are fields where you try to simulate and understand cognition by either having virtual agents or robotics. And following my study, then I ended up moving to the Netherlands to pursue studies first at the University of Amsterdam for my PhD, where I looked more into human behavior and basically used mathematical models to try to describe how humans make decisions and in particular how their memory systems work. I got even more interested in the topic, but then I realized, I'm missing here a crucial piece, which is the black box. So basically the human brain, which is where most of the cognition emerges. And therefore, I decided to keep studying in academy, and I moved to Radboud University in Nijmegen, which is also in the Netherlands, in the south. And there I pursued a postdoc in computational neuroscience, where basically I used, again, mathematical models, but this time to study how the human brain structures and works with abstract and conceptual information. Finally, throughout after these 15, 20 years, I had actually the insight of how the field of AI changed, because when I started, and this was in the middle 90s, artificial intelligence wasn't really on vogue. And this was because some of the systems, in particular neural networks, couldn't really do that some of the tasks, which, for example, for humans are really easy to do. Throughout these 15, 20 years, some major breakthroughs came through the field. In particular, some specific mathematical algorithms were developed to train these networks in a much more efficient way. And also we saw the emergence of massively computational systems, so basically clusters and ability to compute large amounts of information. And as we all know nowadays, AI is having this kind of renaissance, if you want. And therefore, I kept staying into the track of AI and finally decided, okay, now I would like to do something more applied. And I moved outside academy and I focused more on the world of startup. And that's how I arrived at Nostos and here in Berlin.
It's interesting because all my time has been spent in AI being in vogue and the hype cycle. But there were so many AI winters before, and sometimes we can forget that. And from your experience, what that was like. So it's a good reminder. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So tell us, what does Nostos Genomics do, and how are they actually leveraging AI?
At Nostos Genomics focus on a different journey, unfortunately a much less pleasant one. We focus on the problem of rare genetic disease diagnostics. Specifically, throughout the world, rare genetic diseases are, extremely rare, to the point that actually some diseases have as few as 50 people who have this condition throughout the world. However, when you pull all together, actually 88% of the entire population lives with a genetic disease. This means that there is so many different types and conditions. And for each of these patients, it's really hard to get a diagnosis, I think. The problem is if you don't get a diagnosis, you cannot really do anything in starting to address your disease. So it's a very crucial step. And as things are now for patients or people afflicted by this condition, it's an extremely long and hard journey because often it takes many years to actually get to a diagnosis. they have to carry a lot of the weight by themselves. And so at Nostos, we decided to focus exactly on this problem and help with the use of AI to basically reach and facilitate diagnosis. Specifically, there is a step where you have this kind of condition where you look at your DNA and you try to find the mutation in the genes which might be causing this disease. Normally, this is a step which requires a lot of time and work when performed by a human expert. And what we do with AI, we basically speed up this process by having a very sophisticated system who actually reaches a diagnosis in a fraction of the time that a human would require a human, and then, of course, submits this result for review to a human expert, a clinical variant scientist. Our AI system, which is called ION, basically integrates as much data as possible, and it does it in a fully transparent way, which means then the specialist, or again, the variant scientist, can directly look at the results of the AI system and see what kind of pieces of data and evidence supported the conclusion. So basically, providing a diagnosis for the patient very early can facilitate his journey through possibly towards a treatment or some kind of alternative care.
It's really inspiring to see the work that you and the team are working on, because the impact it can have to people who really need that support. Tell us a little bit about why is explainable AI so important, in particular in the healthcare sector?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Nowadays, we see a proliferation of AI systems, but in this specific domain, explainable and transparent AI, it's a crucial. It's crucial because in order for the healthcare sector and, for example, the specialist who is following a patient to trust the result, he has to be able to fully understand it. But fully understand it has even a deeper meaning. He has to be able to interpret all of the reasonings that the system did in a very natural way. Put it the other way around, the system has to reason very much like a human in order for human to trust his judgment. And that's why explainable and transparent AI in this particular application is paramount importance, is crucial. When the system reasons very much the way you do, then it's easier for the human to actually check the results, see what piece of data drove the conclusion, then ultimately being able to use this for information, for example, to relate to the patient. So that's why I think it's really crucial in this sector.
I think it's very crucial, and it's important to really understand the considerations that have to be put in place. Tell us about some of the challenges you're seeing in applying AI within the healthcare industry, because it's not necessarily straightforward.
No, sorry, it's absolutely not straightforward. Linking also to the previous question, one of the problems is to do diagnosis for a rare genetic disease. It's a little bit like having a very large puzzle where you have very few pieces of information and you have to somehow try to come up with a coherent picture. This is extremely challenging on the technical side. To be able to do this, you actually need a very sophisticated system, and that actually brings the problem then for the healthcare industry. What we see is that there is a very quick exponential growth of the AI field in general, with new innovation coming out every year. All the infrastructure, the regulatory systems, and also the legal framework in this sense is lagging, in my opinion, behind, in the sense that it's not really moving at the proper speed. This means that often we find that maybe, yes, the AI system gives you a fantastic, incredible result, but either there is not real concrete guidelines who tell you what the AI system should be allowed to do and what not. Unfortunately, for example, we all know the case coming from the scandal of Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. Is just to say that the AI evolved so quickly that actually there was not guidelines of what should be allowed, what the AI system should be allowed to do. This links back also to our domain, where since we are working with very sensitive data and the domain is extremely deep, one of the challenges we see is that there is a lot of work to be done in informing the lawmakers and the healthcare providers in general of what the AI system is, what the AI system does, and also what it doesn't. It's definitely not the kind of AI system who can go and take decision on its own, similar like to Terminator or this kind of science fiction scenario. At the same time, there is also some education to be done for the patient, to basically make sure that the information when it's given is correctly interpreted and is not misinterpreted. In that sense, I see here is really the main challenge in having proper legal framework, and especially having more and more these discussions with the regulatory systems on one side and on the patient organization and the patient themselves on the other side.
You're listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, if you're interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com. David, it is a quite complicated area, to say the least, and quite a challenging one with so many different variables. And we can see with the AI regulation that's being proposed by the EU, we're making strides towards actually trying to solve some of these problems, but it's not, there's no silver bullet to actually eliminate some of these different things, because there's so many different factors to be taken into consideration. Where do you see the future of AI in healthcare, and in particular within genetic diseases?
That's again an excellent question. The system, let's say the approach that we work on is that the AI systems we develop are not meant in any way to replace specialists. They actually are decision support tools. So the idea is to augment and provide sophisticated tools to the specialist to do better what he has to do in this particular case, analyzing a lot of genetic variants. The AI system as we have now, and I think is just an example also for other domains, are mostly decision support. And this brought the questions also of what are the limits of the AI? So what kind of decisions the AI system should be allowed to do on its own? This, for example, it's a topic, the ethical limits of an AI, which is extremely crucial, for example, in self-driving cars. And it has been discussed at length, both in the philosophy of science and in AI fields. The way I see personally for the healthcare sector is that right now we have a decision support tool, which is pretty sophisticated and smart, but for sure just a tool. In the future, where I like to see AI going is where these decision support tools become actually a lifelong companion. A lifelong companion means that it becomes a system who grows with you, and over the accumulation of experience, information over the years, gains a unique insight on the specific condition that a patient might have. This means that, let's say, after some time, no one else would know your disease as well as your lifelong companion AI system. And the point of this AI system is, again, not to take decisions for you, but actually to facilitate and help you navigate, on the one hand, the healthcare sector and all the different aspects of it, and on the other side, to help you understand your condition. So in this sense, becomes an interface between the patient and, on the other sense, all the parties involved, in this case, the healthcare provider, but potentially also the lawmaker. So indeed, I like to see the AI as becoming this lifelong companion, which supports the journey of the patient towards reaching a diagnosis and possibly a treatment.
David, I really like that lifelong companion and the interface, and then coming together of all the different parties involved. So you're making a decision with all the best information you possibly can. So that next best action is really well thought out of, and it's actually really inspiring for the future. So thank you very much for your time today, David.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast with our guest David Neville, Head of Machine Learning at Nostos Genomics. Please rate, review, and leave comments. Check out our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Podcasts are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Until next time, take care. Bye.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. For more information, contact mark@alldus.com. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following. AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.